Thanks for tuning in. Reverend MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, Lady Dori, Belle, Lady MeeLing America. A few names that I've been known by. Share and subscribe to my official channel. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. So those who understand prophecy understand that in most aspects, in regards to the Holy Scriptures in certain regards, it is the New Testament that is focused upon, and what is forgotten is the Old Testament, except for little excerpts here and there. And so, in that aspect, I'm going to read my book, Failsafe, The Kennedy Curse Fused with Science Fiction Fantasy, but backwards-ish. And so, it's going to be what it's going to be. Ready? Okay. I wrote this book all by myself. I thought it was going to be fun. So, humanity seemed to follow a few mundane patterns throughout their existences. Beyond power, and the latter was revenge. Jesus added, "My hypothesis of this compound throughout humanity can only be utilized for destructive purposes." Magdalene explained, "Each frozen aspect of their existence can be utilized when the time comes for the upcoming, while never allowing humanity to survive." Jesus and Rose called others into the meeting for Magdalene to pause before she stated, "There is no doubt in the anger of a woman's scorn, but hell hath no fury like a mother's scorn." Snuggling her head into his chest, she sighed as the illumination transported the two off through the universe. "You are the only one who argued mankind deserved the third chance, whereas I was perfectly content taking everyone out back in the day." Materializing within the unearthly realms of the outermost limits of the universe, Magdalene said, "I thought you were smarter than to be fooled by the lies and arrogance when I originally signed on this mission with you, passing on a more profitable venture." Jesus said, "I truly thought they would have learned from all the persecution mistakes, but the witch trials were only one proof otherwise of mankind's quest and fear of power." Magdalene whispered, "They did not fear power during their quests and ventures, nor when they attained their individual maximum potential." Rose said through the shadows, "Mankind was arrogant to believe they were strong enough to force their evolution before all lessons were completed successfully, and as such the time of their experiments ended." Magdalene nagged Jesus, "I told you humanity should have been destroyed the second we saw their development in the galaxy, but you thought mankind could change for the betterment of the universe." Jesus exclaimed, "Holy Spirit of the Divine, you have got to be kidding me." He added, "How was I supposed to know mankind would amend my words and actions to achieve their goals and remove the balance taught?" Magdalene added while posing the question, "In the zone which males who open themselves to balance with the feminine energies were persecuted and harassed, are you truly surprised the harmony throughout the human race never came to fruition?" Before Jesus could respond, she said additionally, "Even with the texts and the teachings within Buddhism to coincide with the harming none outside of self-defense, The feminine energies were never fully balanced. Rose inquired of Jesus Christ, "What do you have to say about her accusations of your relaxed attitude?" Shamefully, he responded, "The powers and abilities of man's physical form overtook the logical thought processes, and thus it is my diagnosis. The hormones running throughout the phallic DNA structures caused most of the problems to explode and spew into the entire race." Magdalene said to Rose with a chuckle, "Perhaps there can be some use from humanity after all, beyond the information database." Rose, filled with confusion, inquired, "How so, Magdalene?" Without another word, the important relics floated into the air and out through the Milky Way galaxy into the universe. Using the necessary internally built energies of each relic to propel each object to the specified origin, space and time disappeared. Flying well out of the furthest limits for the Milky Way galaxy, all important artifacts took the paths needed to find safety. The remaining tortured souls lingered on Earth, were grouped together to being another round of tornadoes, utilizing the debris to wipe out many people in the general masses. Those a part of the top 1% of the 1% were not going anywhere anytime soon. The remaining audience members filled with more fright while watching sporadic objects shooting off to disappear from sight within seconds from multiple explosions. After the final piece allowed the chemical energy to propel the antique towards the outermost limits of the galaxy, the planetary orbits changed. The lingering souls ripped apart the remaining individuals on the planet, and after their demise, some points were explained further. Shredding with the winds, pulling every single item towards the black hole, the vacuum obliterated every single unnecessary life form from existence. Losing the ability to remain within the incubation portion of the experiment within the universe, the time came to cleanse all of the remaining unworthy cherubim. The few species which were worthwhile to save from the destructive forces had already left the earthly plane of existence, and only the compassionate, honorable, and righteous ones were to remain. The sun detonated without warning to create antimatter, and shortly afterwards of making a vacuum where the ball of flames had once been located, rapidly transforming from a gigantic fiery existence into a black hole where the sun once hovered. Random items began flying into the atmosphere, soaring beyond the weakening gravitational pull, while the pieces of random materials flew towards the vacuuming black hole, taking all to another dimension. All human lives were expanded within the Akashic records and places into a permanent database for all other beings in the universe to read through, to find inspiration, to learn, and to prevent similar results from mistakes. Locking all beings and their paths within the video and microfiche database for anyone to utilize the information when necessary for others. While the final pieces of the Milky Way galaxy swirled towards the black hole where the sun once existed, Mr. Inri looked to Magdalene, saying in a calm and gentle voice, "I told them I would return, and the instruction manuals were supposed to assist their path to what could have been greatness for the human species." Magdalene looked up into his eyes with a slight smile, saying, "You kept your promise, as did I." Shaking his head among the flying debris with a grin, "They should not have known better than to allow their egos to be so bold as to edit the original manuscripts for individualized power." Wrapping his arms around her as a light engulfed every pore of their beings, "You know, this could have ended this whole thing millenniums ago, had the first and second major failures and lessons throughout the existence of humanity taken hold, and their egos had released their arrogance. Turning her head to view the masses, the innocence faded while the darkness blended with the illumination to create a yin-yang emanating from Maggie. Scanning the audience for a single similar soul without the ability to match one, she shrugged her shoulders with a sigh. Moving closer to the group of deified aliens, Maggie took her time with each footstep, shuffling her feet while motioning with her hands for everyone to gather close to her for the announcement. Maggie kept her arms open for the huddle, fearful of the choice she was going to make for the next step for mankind. She chuckled to herself. The audience continued trembling while the group awaited impatiently for the response. Several minutes of silence, feeling similar to decades passing, before she sighed, chuckling, stating, "The word mankind is such an oxymoron as humanity." The group interrupted Maggie's train of thought, asking in unison, "Is it more compassionate to kill through thousands of stabbings, or is it more humane to end things with one swift move?" Stroking her chin, Maggie replied, stating the facts. "This era is not humanity's first attempt to successfully evolve past the necessary experiences and lessons to graduate to the next level." She added, "Multiple planets beyond Mercury and Venus have been destroyed because of mankind's inability to learn from the mistakes. Thus, an infinite number of souls have suffered far more than those who are watching." Throughout each statement made by Magdalene, while she thought out loud, her appearance transformed before all, just as Mr. Inri and his physical representation changed. During each syllable spoken, a button or zipper would unclasp the material covering each person, falling to the floor. Upon fully being disrobed by the energies as the thoughts were spoken audibly, both Magdalene and Mr. Inri's hair increased in length and darkened in color. Flowing in the breezes surrounding the two, several cloths of fine linen wrapped around their bodies separately, fitting snugly around Magdalene's form. A beard rapidly grew into his face as a veil gently covered her, only to reveal her pronounced eyes, while small drops of blood left the corner of his palms and feet. The burdened souls of the globe whimpered and explained their plights when she abruptly put one hand up to stop everyone speaking any further to comment. "Through and though Abraham may have debated with Yahweh about the possible innocence at the time, I cannot imagine the numerous attempts within the same conversation. Knowing the information from the records and the antiques, the decision is simple," Maggie explained to the groups listening intently. She smiled sadistically, stating, "Humanity does not deserve another chance to prove themselves, and instead of destroying their entire existence, I suggest another option." Creating intrigue, Maggie added, "I suggest keeping the information available of every single existence for all future beings to show them where humanity had succeeded and the areas of failure to prevent their species from repeating the same mistakes." Repeating the question several times to Maggie before Carradine responded with annoyance dripping from each syllable every time the need arose to ask Maggie again, "Is it more compassionate to kill through thousands of stabbings, or is it more humane to end things with one swift move? Is it more compassionate to kill through thousands of stabbings? Or is it more humane to end things with one swift move? Is it more compassionate to kill through thousands of stabbings? Or is it more humane to end things with one swift move? What does your question have to do with the death of my two guys and their death? Maggie demanded, understanding while being ignored. Lakshmi moved closer to Maggie, stating, "You have seen the lessons within the ancient relics from olden days while living among humanity, experiencing their daily existence." Sophia gently added, "You were chosen because of a patient strength necessary for a full understanding prior to making a move, while containing the energy for immediate action when needed." Lucifer crossed his arms while stomping towards Maggie, saying, "The spectrum of events were not only experimental within your changeling being, but for humanity as a whole." Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy gradually made her way through the group to stand before Maggie with a smile, asking, "Your lineage brought everyone here to this point, and your understanding of the past alongside of the experiences within this existence. We need you to make the final decision." Aristotle stated, "The ones off in the universe have watched for the signs from our existence, and after all of the planetary prior lives, they want to know whether or not the project is worthwhile." Maggie saw the various situations, relics, and events from the beginning to this crucial moment in time to see Mr. Inry standing next to her, telepathically explaining they thought humanity would learn the necessary steps for the next evolutionary step with his sacrifice. He fell to his knees, tears pouring down his face as he looked up towards the remaining innocence of the galaxy. Mr. Inry wept a heartfelt apology to her. Maggie listened to the shortcomings all around while everyone else continued experiencing the suffering. The flashes of images flowed between the two when the moment of truth entered her mind. Rising to his feet, Mr. Inry whispered, "It has always been up to you to find the balance, my Magdalene." Lowering his forehead to touch hers slightly, he whispered, "I am sorry for what they do not understand, and I wish I could have spared you." Moving away from him, Maggie calmly stated, "The word humanity is an oxymoron for mankind." Mr. Inry repeated the question to Magdalene, "Is it more compassionate to kill through thousands of stabbings, or is it more humane to end things with one swift move?" Christopher looked onto Luke's shredded remains filled with shock and horror. Wiping Luke's blood out from his eyes, Christopher looked at his hands with worry. Having been certain of specific details for several decades, to abruptly lose the illusion, he searched for answers from anyone. Out of the shadows, a hunched cloak figure maneuvered into visibility for him to watch Caradwin inch closer towards the center of the group, gradually moving beyond the rest of the individuals, making her way closer to Christopher. His eyes were locked onto hers, freezing him in place. Without a concern for his safety, as he placed one hand on his popped-out hip, Christopher waited for her arrival. Staring at him crossly while moving closer to the young man, Caradwin's anger increased with each footstep. Though he was petrified, he refused to release his pride. Kuan Yin moved closer to Christopher, asking, "Is it more compassionate to kill through thousands of stabbings, or is it more humane to end things with one swift move?" The Egyptian god Ra appeared next to Caradwin, predominantly displaying his illumination while asking, "As a homosexual male, What would you do in my position? Remaining in the same position while Christopher tried not to visibly show the trembling within his core, and unable to comprehend the turn of events, when he said with a snarky tone of voice, I would ask which party you came from with that costume before inquiring. How you shine so brightly. Without hesitation, he added, next, I would ask which gym you work out in, and finalize by asking, what do you mean, what would I do in your position? Raising one wrinkled arm towards Christopher's face while inching closer, Carradine reached out to touch his cheek, whispering softly, you failed. Using her blackened nails to cause a sporadic spark to jolt, igniting an instantaneous fire, the second they met his skin. Discharging the flames to burn all of the hair on and within Christopher's head and face, to catch fire among all the other large and minute hairs, down to the tips of his toes. All onlookers gasped in terror, listening to the popping cells in the flesh where the smelling of the burning. As the pieces of Christopher randomly sprayed, many had bits of his blood sprayed onto their bodies, while others tasted whatever landed into their mouths. Spitting the disgusting flavor out of their mouths, the remainder received the expectorant mixture. He fell to the ground after the lengthy burn, while masses cried in pain and terrorized fear. Observing, after all, he fell to the ground, Christopher thought, along with his last breath, a flamer going out and sparkled flames and ember is better than anything I could have thought of for my final exit from this realm. Maggie started running towards Carradine while demanding answers to the responses for Carradine's response to their demise, noticing her slowly putting one hand up, asking, is it more compassionate to kill through thousands of stabbings, or is it more humane to end things with one swift move? Stopping Maggie in her tracks, tilting her head to one side, asking, what are you talking about, ma'am? Floating towards the floor, Lakshmi reached out to catch Maggie alongside of Kuan Yin, looking up into their eyes with a joyful grin while they assisted Maggie to her feet. Luke wrapped his arms around her body, pulling her close while glaring towards Christopher, who shrugged his shoulders. Moving towards several beings to speak with them, Luke looked on with confusion. Maggie pulled away after giving him a slight peck on his cheek, oblivious to the crowds. When Luke attempted to point to the horrifying sights in front of the people, she ignored his commentary. The group of beings gathered around her, whispering amongst themselves. Luke ceaselessly attempted to join the conversation, even though he saw Christopher remaining to the side. Kali Ma maneuvered herself in front of his path, stopping his movement instantly. Looking over her head to see thousands of arms with weaponry in forms he had never seen, Luke wet himself. She bent at the waist to lower her eyes to his, causing him to allow the diarrhea to flow to the floor. Christopher's eyes widened in fear for the first time in decades, never seeing such a fury and rage emanate and illuminate Kali's fury in such a manner before. He, too, started losing control over his bladder. Throughout her tirade, yelling into Luke's face of the disgrace before her, Kali Ma's skin began releasing visible steam. Lucifer meandered in between the two, asking Luke, is it more compassionate to kill through thousands of stabbings, or is it more humane to end things with one swift move? One individual from the group, huddling together, asked Luke, as a heterosexual male, what would you do in this position? Searching the crowds for an answer while he yelled, let us all go free and let us be. That's what I would say, yeah, that sounds right. Ganesh raised his trunk to release a screech before Set moved closer to Luke, inquiring, do you truly believe humanity deserves another chance? Nodding his head up and down rapidly, Luke attempted to explain, "I will never do anything wrong ever again if you let me live." Feverishly looking around his immediate area, he exclaimed, "Maybe if you allow all of us to survive whatever hallucination is going on right now, we will learn to be perfect." Yelling while raising all weaponized arms above her head to swiftly strike Luke at the same moment with all armaments in each hand. You failed. Christopher looked onto Luke's shredded remains with shock and horror, wiping Luke's blood from his eyes. Christopher put his palm over his face while Luke screamed her name, trying to run after her, just as Maggie was going to dive through the wall to play with her pet anglerfish. Lucifer jumped to guard the entrance, shaking one finger side to side while informing Maggie it was unsafe to enter the waters of the globe at the moment. She shrugged her shoulders. Wrapping her arms around his muscularly hairy waist, she looked up and into his glowing eyes, creating a slight grin to form as he watched her scamper towards Collie for a hug. The Grim Reaper wrapped his arms around Maggie, lifting her upward while swirling round and round in circles as the two flew above the crowds. Maggie's attention was drawn to the glimmer of the blade of the sickle. Luke ran towards Maggie and grasped just a little too late, watching the Reaper's arms flow through the tattered cloak. Smiling as she leaned into the adoring arms, she kissed his skeletal cheek. Maggie's eyes rolled backwards as she fell to the ground. "Mott," repeated her earlier declaration one final time. "This is a moment on energies of this galaxy and universe. Heed my words and my intentions." Christopher and Luke stared at her body remaining still on the lounge chair, confused beyond words, remaining silent while overlooking her intently to keep Maggie safe or get anything she might need. The two knelt on one knee, remaining at the foot and the head of her frame while their minds wandered with fear. A sudden serenity flowed throughout their beings. The oblong triangular formation sent energetic waves into the atmosphere to fill the Earth and galaxy with a beaming illumination as three remained quiet. Shortly after the light sent the final ray of incandescence, a calm filled all portions of the Milky Way. Similar to entering the eye of a hurricane storm, paused before Mott stated proudly before everyone in the same area, "Here we meet to finalize as all witness the transaction and the final choices." Without warning, the lingering souls throughout the globe united as one above the outstretched hands, transporting all into the same location. The last living plant on the Earth's surface ignited upon the waters, touching the leaf of the green wormwood plant. The second the poisoned fluid reached a single leaf of the foliage, the roots released all dirt, crutching and clutching to the gravity of Earth. Shooting upwards towards the skies and soaring beyond, it was lost amongst the stars. All of the explosives beneath the layers and in between the crusts of the Earth, shifting the tectonic plates, detonated all at the same time. Within the blink of the eyes, all three were sitting within the area on the center of the stage, surrounded by the masses, shocked by the view of all captives from the top 1% within their binds, unable to do anything to save themselves, let alone anyone else. Within the speakers around their ears, the captives listened to the voice whisper of many events in which they specifically could have chosen the morally correct option. filling their individual boxes with their urine and fecal matter up to their necks, all choked and gagged from the pungent scent and textures covering their bodies. All were grateful because they were unable to smell or feel anything covering nor filling the areas surrounding anyone watching. Maggie jumped up suddenly, startling Christopher and Luke when she flew towards the wall of water, repeatedly screaming, "Dionysus! Dionysus! Dionysus!" Christopher put his palm over his face while Luke screamed her name, trying to run after her, while encouraging Maggie to ignore Luke, saying, "Males tend to jerk off while females tend to," looking towards Maggie with confusion. "What is it you females do exactly?" Shaking his hands in the air. "Never mind. I don't need to know." Maggie rolled her eyes. How sad a gay male is afraid to talk about female enjoyment just as equally as a straight male. Returning the conversation to her inquiring points, Maggie asked, "What is your opinion of a false religion versus a religion with dual views instead of a singular view?" Igniting a firestorm of commentary from the males, she additionally inquired, "With such strong opinions, what is your opinion of the claim of all humans becoming immortal with the Zoroastrian beliefs? And what are your thoughts about the arrival of the Maiyatra?" Christopher joked to ease the tension. "Well, aren't you a little dragon-headed beast sent from Satan with 7 heads full of queries with 10 billion questions in each today?" Luke attempted to jest along. "I think you can move as stealth as a leopard, are as temperamental as a bear, and as pronounced as a lion in front of and leading 9 other lions." The 2 males looked at one another filled with confusion and simultaneously asked Maggie, "Are you feeling okay? Or is something wrong?" Wondering if the group searching for her were able to penetrate through her psyche, he knew something else was wrong. Without warning, a presence overcame his senses, and he knew her intuition was correct, feeling Buckung's energy. Noticing Luke standing at Maggie's feet while he stood near her head, Christopher mumbled under his breath, "We are the 2 lampposts to guide her way, as well as witnesses for Maggie, I'm assuming." Sitting upright abruptly and looking towards Christopher, Maggie asked, "Would you please describe me in as few descriptions as possible?" Unsure of the problem or what was happening, as he slowly responded, "You have overcome more than most others while remaining saintly in comparison." Luke interjected in competition, "You fled the wilderness to escape the same dragon beast sent to kill you to somehow befriend him." Christopher nervously joked to try easing the tension emanating throughout Maggie while remaining in the running lead. "Too bad you are not a male, because you could have been my king and be worshipped by your right-hand man, instead of only being one another's conscience for all these years." "You know, I was looking to make her my wife one day," Luke exclaimed. "Thanks for saying that, jerk-off." "Yep, I have been known to do that many times over," Christopher chuckled while encouraging Maggie to ignore Luke while saying, "Males tend to be jerk-offs sometimes." Out of breath and in a panic, Maggie exclaimed, "Christopher, look who is here!" Without Buckhook in sight, when she turned around, she fell to the floor from exhaustion. Both Christopher and Luke attempted to wake her, but without any luck on their side. The 2 carefully lifted her small frame to gently place her body onto the chaise lounge again, created within the time of Queen Anne era, while the males whispered among themselves to try to figure out what happened to Maggie and assess the problem at hand. Maggie seemingly remained lifeless. Barely able to notice her chest move from inhaling and exhaling, Christopher increasingly worried about Maggie's safety. Just when she thought the heat was getting too warm to handle, she burst through the redness into a darkened, cool blue. Sensing the warmth gone from her surroundings, Maggie felt the brisk coldness all around her. Filling her being with a jolt of awakening energy, she swam as quickly as she could towards the surface, tasting the saltiness of the ocean while Maggie fled out from the Dead Sea covered by large chunks of dried salt, landing on top of a tropical island. Pushing herself off of the sand to stand up and feel the warm sun mix with the cool breeze along with the ocean side, Maggie's soul met instant peace on earth. Enjoying the scent of the salt water while adoring the pleasing views in all directions, Maggie found a fire pit. Hearing the crackling and popping from the live fire caused her to appreciate the sunset or sunrise all the more. Observing a large quantity of prepared food and liquid to drink, she searched for an offering of thanks. Walking closer to the rainforest plant life, she searched for the ideal sensation upon her scavenging. Once she felt the energy surge, Maggie internally knew the ideal choice. First bowing to the ground to lean towards one plant, she reached to pull one leaf forward. Gently pressing her lips to the foliage in appreciation, she plucked a single blossom. Bowing a final time and slowly returning to the food, Maggie placed the flower upon the table. Taking a moment of silence and gratitude, she searched for anyone in sight. Shrugging her shoulders to gradually reach for a slab of meat, she devoured all her stomach could handle. Quickly cleaning her plate of food, Maggie returned to the same plant for similar purposes prior to fixing herself a second flatware serving. With another moment of silent appreciation prior to eating, Maggie enjoyed every delectable morsel tasted, nourishing every pore of her being while strengthening each beat of her heart and transforming her mind. Maggie's soul felt the necessary upcoming choices. Just as she was about to release a joy-filled sigh, a group of natives yelled in her direction, shooting arrows and throwing spears while screaming as they ran to attack Maggie. She ran off, unaware the group stopped running. Upon reaching the table, the aggressive savages encircled this table to snare at the floral offering, enchanted and enamored. Allowing Maggie to escape and run through the foliage into the caverns for safety, she found herself running closer to the males talking. Running towards Christopher and Luke, she yelled, "Luke, you need to meet someone!" Out of breath and in a panic, Maggie exclaimed, "Christopher, look who's here." And that is the beginning of the first portion of the reading backwards. Fun, right? All right. You guys share and like and subscribe to my official channel, Reverend MeeLing. Go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com. Put that information in the information area. And you guys